Even though one NFL analyst paints a grim picture for the Pats' skill position players in 2025, I have hope. That's what we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I am your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, also host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and a sports talk show host veteran. On today's episode, a surprise candidate to start at left guard, maybe. And we tell you why patience might just pay off with one of the team's biggest needs. But first, more national shade for the local franchise. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, this week, we're going all 5 days. Moving forward, we're going all 5 days, Monday through Friday, your daily Patriots podcast right here. Lock it in with Locked On. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. There is tangible optimism about this football team. There's also optimism about this offense. But there's one analyst that I want to talk about today who is pumping the brakes on this Patriots offense and their skill position players. And that one analyst is highly respected, very analytical, works for ESPN. His name is Bill Barnwell. Barnwell ranked all 32 teams when it comes to skill position groups, and the Patriots were ranked 30th in the NFL by Barnwell. Last time I checked, there are 32 teams in the league. So Bill Barnwell tells us that the Patriots have the third worst skill position groupings in the NFL. When you look back at 2024, the Patriots ranked 31st. So as bad as last year was, Barnwell says the Patriots have only improved by one spot. You go back to 2023, the Pats were ranked 26th. So it's been bad. It's been bad from 23 to 24 to now, according to Barnwell, 25. And here's what Bill Barnwell wrote in his column about the Patriots. There isn't really a plan B for the lead receiver without Stephon Diggs in the mix. Mac Hollins and Pop Douglas are complementary players. Rookie third rounder Kyle Williams is not entering the league as a complete receiver who can win at all levels. Jalen Polk had an unbelievably bad rookie season. So wide receivers, Barnwell, not high on them. How about running backs? Ramondre Stevenson has struggled with efficiency in a lead role over the past 2 seasons. He also fumbled a whopping 7 times on 240 touches last season. Rookie second-rounder Travion Henderson might not have the size to absorb a full-time workload. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it is totally unfair for Barnwell to rank the Patriots' skill position groups towards the bottom of the league. I actually think it's not 100% unfair. There is some reason behind this. The Patriots need a big impact for this rookie class. They need Will Campbell to prove he's a starting left tackle, and not only a starting left tackle, but at least an average starting left tackle. They need Henderson to prove that he can have consistent impact week in and week out at the NFL level and stay healthy. They need Kyle Williams to show the world and prove that he could be a legitimate NFL wide receiver and he can help where this team needs to help, which is verticality, going downfield, being that X receiver. This rookie class, there's so much pressure on them to justify being picked and to help this offense, not in 3 months, not in 4 months, but at least by the end of month number 1. So when you're banking on a rookie class, as much as the Patriots need to bank on this rookie class to help their offense, it's okay to ask the questions. It's reasonable to wonder if the Patriots have enough. Then you look at wide receiver. We've gone through this, but Diggs in his 30s, coming back from an ACL. Kendrick Bourne coming back from the ACL last year. Now says he's ready, he's physically able, but will he be assignment right? He has struggled at times, being at the right place, the right time. Pop Douglas, his size, his frame, can he give you as many snaps as you want him to? If you push him to the outside, can he survive out there from time to time? Kyle Williams, we went through that. Polk, Baker, are they even on this team by week 1? Kayshon Boutte, not consistent downfield, was in the trade rumors leading up to the draft. So wide receiver, lots of questions. I like the running back room. I think Ramondre Stevenson is better than he's given credit for. I think Henderson is going to be good. I think Antonio Gibson is good. Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, solid. Not great, solid veterans that are, yes, long in the tooth, but they've been productive. They were productive last year. So, but there is some reason to ask questions, and there is some reason for hesitation as far as how good this offense can be. But I have hope, and I will tell you why I have hope. I don't believe that all of these skill position issues the last couple of years have been on these skill position players. I think there's been other forces at work. The offensive line has been dreadful. And I don't know how many skill position groups could produce consistent football with as bad as the offensive line has been for the Patriots, both in 23 and 24. The offensive line should be better this season. Might not be great, should be better. How about quarterback play? Do you think quarterback play impacts the wide receivers, the tight ends, and the running backs? Abso-freaking-lutely. Mac Jones was dreadful in 23. Bailey Zappi wasn't much better. Then last year, you started with Jacoby Brissett, who wasn't good. And then you had a rookie quarterback in Drake May trying to figure out what he can do at the NFL level. And then you have the coaching questions. Alex Van Pelt, the OC last year, plenty of questions about him. You had just a number of different wide receiver coaches over the past couple of years that we have questioned, from the wide receivers coach to the assistant wide receiver coaches, whether it was Troy Brown or what was it, Tyler Hughes, who never coached a position in the NFL before last season. The offensive line coaching, Adrian Clem, and some of the other questions we've had over the past few years. So there have been legitimate questions about the coaching, the O-line, and the quarterback play that directly impacts how good your skill position groups can be. And so it stands to reason, if you got better at OC, and I think you did, I think you got much better. If you got better on the O-line, which I think you did, and your quarterback is getting ready for year 2 after showing flashes and shows future franchise quarterback potential, it stands to reason that that should positively impact the rest of the skill position groups. And I think that's precisely what's going to happen. So I have hope that the surroundings for these skill position players is better in 25 than it was in 23 and 24. And because of that, the 25 position skill groups will be better than they were the prior 2 years. I also think because you have so many young players, you're going to develop throughout the season. As the season goes on, I expect Henderson to get better. As the season goes on, I expect Williams to have a bigger role in this offense. As the season goes on, I expect Will Campbell to be better. I expect Jared Wilson to eventually be your starting center. And yes, I expect Drake May to elevate his game. I think he will be better in year 2, and I think he will do a better job of elevating the talent around him in year 2 because he'll have a better offensive line and he'll have a much, much better offensive coordinator. You will see this offense improve. You will see these skill position groups improve over time. And by the end of the year, this offensive line, sprinkled in with some young guys, will be as good as it's been since going back to 2022. So Bill Barnwell, I think you have good reason. I understand why you would doubt the skill position groups. I've had to watch this team. I understand watching it week to week how bad it has been. And I get the questions that you have about the wide receiver room. I truly understand it. However, I've got hope. And I think a lot of Patriots fans have hope that 2025 is going to start turning the corner offensively for this operation. A local writer has a surprise name that could play a huge role at left guard this season. Find out who it is next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, let's be honest, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. You know, I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups. The app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet. I have been a fan of FanDuel for quite a long time. I especially love the same game parlays. I have won several times with same game parlays, or you can even just watch a bet ride into the ninth inning if you're watching baseball. FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. The left guard competition is wide open. It's been wide open since day one, and if it's even more wide open now since Wes Schweitzer decided to retire, which leads us to this question. Could a surprise name fill a big hole on the offensive line at left guard? I asked this question because Evan Lazar at Patriots.com wrote recently about the left guard competition, and here's what he wrote. It's far from over, and we wouldn't rule out Caedan Wallace winning the job. Wallace was waived by many, or viewed. He was viewed. He wasn't waived. Wallace was viewed by many as a possible college tackle to guard convert in last year's draft. Now, this is interesting. Caedan Wallace possibly filling that left guard hole. We went through a bunch of names before OTAs and mandatory minicamp, wondering who could win the job. One of the names that we did not mention was Wallace, because Wallace was expected to be tackle. Whether it was right tackle, left tackle, swing tackle, that was going to be his position. That's what we were focused on. Can Wallace be a suitable backup to Morgan Moses? If something happens with Will Campbell, is there any shot of Wallace moving to the left? Or if you just need some insurance, could he play both positions on the right and left side there and be that swing tackle that is very valuable in the NFL? But now, after OTAs, after mandatory minicamp, we are asking the question whether or not Wallace could be your answer at left guard. And that's because Wallace did get some snaps. He got some reps at left guard. Now we begin with Wallace's size. He is a monstrous human being, which means he can move people in the run game. And if you have questions of whether or not your offensive line is going to be able to create those running lanes, theoretically speaking, Wallace should help you do that. Just with his size and his movement, he should be able to get guys out of the way and pave the way for Stevenson and Henderson and Gibson. And it's not just overall height and weight. It is also the length of Caedan Wallace. When you look at it, and I know we talked a lot about arm length with, the Will Campbell, whether or not he can survive in the NFL with the arm length he has and the wingspan that he has. But Campbell's not the only one that has some questions when it comes to wingspan. Garrett Bradbury, who right now is your projected starting center, also has questions about his length and his wingspan. And this is something that Evan Lazar brought up, which I thought was a great point in his article at Patriots.com. Campbell, 77 3/8 wingspan, and Bradbury, 76.5-inch wingspan, are both narrower body types at their respective positions. Thus, having a larger left guard who takes up more space, such as Wallace, could make sense. And I do think that makes sense. If you've got smaller framed left tackle, smaller framed center, put a bigger framed left guard in the middle of those two guys, the meat in the sandwich, right? Put that guy in the middle, and it helps at least a little bit correct the shortcomings, no pun intended, of Bradbury and of Campbell. If you're wondering about Caedan Wallace's wingspan, it is 82 and 5/8 inches. Again, so Will Campbell, his wingspan is 77 and 3/8. Bradbury, 76 and a half. Wallace, 82 and 5/8. He is a monstrous individual, as I mentioned earlier, not only height, not only weight, but also length. And that could absolutely help Campbell and absolutely help Bradbury. But the $1 million question is whether or not Wallace is capable of playing left guard. Specifically, is he capable of protecting Drake May from the left guard spot? That's my biggest concern as we get ready for this season. Is Will Campbell going to be able to hold his water at left tackle and pass pro? Bradbury was god-awful in pass protection last year with Minnesota. So if you put Wallace there at left guard, that's fine in theory. But can he actually do the job? Can he actually pass protect from that position? Wallace last year at tackle, if you look at Pro Football Focus, Wallace ranked 101st out of 140 offensive tackles in pass block grade. So he wasn't good last year. Could he be better? Could moving to guard make him better? I looked this up. Dane Brugler of The Athletic, he does the Beast every year, one of the best draft pundits in the country. And I look back at his Beast, as he calls it, which is, his rundown of all the prospects that he goes through and evaluates. He puts out the Beast right before the draft. I looked back at 2024's Beast from Brugler, and I wanted to see what Brugler wrote about Wallace. And here's what he wrote. Doesn't have elite range in his lateral movements, creating a small margin for error versus edge speed. Now, why does that matter? Because if we're theoretically going to move Wallace to left guard, we're moving him in right on the O-line. He's going to move to the inside, which means that if his biggest issue in college at Penn State was against edge speed, you are combating that now. You are trying to take away that weakness because you don't have to worry about edge speed when you're playing left guard as much as if you're playing tackle. You're not allowing the guys to bend the corner around you because you're no longer playing tackle. So if Wallace, if you could mitigate that weakness of his in pass protection by moving him into the inside, then maybe, just maybe, he ends up being a much better pass blocker at guard than he was at tackle in his rookie season. Now, we also have to be fair to Wallace. He was hurt. He was hurt for most of the year. Was he ever 100%? Probably not. Missed a huge chunk of the season. Parachuted back in. Was dinged up again. So when we look at his pass blocking grades, run blocking grades, when we look at his evaluations of his rookie season, we have to remember, keep it in the back of your head that this guy wasn't healthy for 2-3 months. And that's obviously a problem. And it's obviously a problem for a guy who is as big as him playing on the offensive line. But Dane Brugler actually liked him. He actually liked him. Looking at what Dane Brugler had to say back in 2024 in the Beast, Dane wrote, overall, Wallace needs to continue developing his consistency, but is a smooth athlete with a wide base, punch-ready hands, and improved physicality to finish. It wouldn't be a surprise to see him starting as an NFL rookie at right tackle or potentially inside at guard. So Brugler had Wallace ranked as a 4th rounder. He had him graded as a 4th round pick in the 2024 draft. And not only did Brugler have him as a 4th rounder, you could hear by what I just read to you, he thought that Wallace had more than enough talent to be a starting offensive lineman during his rookie season, whether that was at right tackle or moving inside to guard. And Dane Brugler is one of the best. He's one of the best. But my other question is, do you trust Caedan Wallace? Can you trust Caedan Wallace? He hasn't had a very good camp. And as Greg Bedard wrote, the people that he speaks with in the NFL, they think that Wallace has the talent, but that there is, quote unquote, something missing. Can Wallace find that during training camp? And can this team trust him to start on the offensive line? I have to see it before I believe it. And if they can, if he ends up being a starting left guard for you, in the big picture, that has significant impact. I would rather have a starting left guard than a depth offensive tackle. And you also look at it, aside from Drake May, the 2024 draft looks like it might go down as one of the worst that the Patriots have had. And if you can get Wallace out there starting on the offensive line, now you have May and you have Wallace starting, it doesn't make that draft look as bad as it looks right now. And if you could go into 2026 saying Will Campbell's the guy at left tackle, Wallace is the guy at left guard, Jared Wilson is your starting center, Owenu is still young enough, at least 4 of your 5 offensive linemen under 30 years old, and 3 of those 4 guys really young in either their second or third years. And that gives you some optimism about the offensive line moving forward. A little more patience might be wise for the Pats to fill one of this team's biggest needs. We'll tell you why next. This is Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Blue chip pass rusher is a top 3 need for this team. When I look into the future and I say if you want to be a contending team year in and year out, a blue chip pass rushing edge is something that right now, as far as we know, is missing. Now, arguably, Keion White could end up being that guy. Maybe K'Lavon Chaisson continues to build momentum from last year in his late run with the Raiders and ends up looking like that first-round talent when he was drafted years ago by Jacksonville. Maybe those things work out, but I'm not going to take either of those for granted. So when you look on paper right now, the Pats really don't have a blue chip pass rushing edge. Harold Landry, 29 years old, coming off of arguably his worst pass rush season. So I don't think you could bank on him for the next 3 or 4 years. Anthony Jennings doesn't really have a pass rushing pop to his game. So a legitimate pass rush prospect. Now, maybe Braden Swinson ends up being that guy, but we've got to see him play at the NFL level before we start writing that down, whether it's in pencil or in Sharpie. But here's the big news. The big news is that next offseason, you're going to have some opportunity. So in case Keion White doesn't hit and is not that consistent guy getting after the quarterback, in case Chaisson ends up sliding back, looking like the younger Chaisson rather than the Chaisson that was in Vegas this past season, Landry continues to look older and eventually ages out of the league sooner rather than later. If that stuff happens, Braden Swinson doesn't end up popping for you as a sub-pass rusher, showing that potential that many believe that he has, including myself. If almost everything goes wrong at edge and you're wondering, what does the future hold? This team is in desperation mode to find that young blue chip pass rushing prospect. Here's the good news. I'm going to sound like Dane Brugler's PR agent. But again, he's one of the best in the business. And he recently wrote about the pass rushing edge prospects for next year's draft. He's previewing the 2025 college season, and so he's getting everybody ready for the 2026 draft. This is what they do. This is what he does. Here's what he wrote. And of course, this is July. All of these things can change during the college football season. We're talking about how we feel right now. Here's what Brugler wrote about this season's college football pass rushing prospect class. While I feel great about the 7 edge prospects profiled, numerous other candidates belong in the conversation. Can Miami's Reuben Bain Jr. return to his freshman year impact? Is Kenyatta Jackson Jr. the next top 50 pass rush prospect from Ohio State? The list goes on and on. We're talking depth, baby. The list goes on and on, looking at defensive and pass rush prospects in next year's draft. Brugler continues, which speaks to the high-end talent and overall depth of this group. That should be music to the ears of every single Patriots fan watching and or listening to this episode. Brugler says that the 26 draft class has high-end talent and overall depth at a huge position of need for the Patriots right now on paper. So if you have to try to find ways to make it work this year, and you don't have that outstanding pass rusher who stands out, that defenses have to game plan for. And again, hopefully that's Keon White. But if it doesn't end up being White, and it doesn't end up being Chason or Swinson, if you could just find ways this year, creative ways, simulated pressure, sending linebackers, all those different things, if you can just get through this season and you can build this football team the right way, as you're getting to December, you're playing better football, and there's a reason why Patriots fans are excited for 2026. You can go into next offseason feeling pretty comfortable with the idea. If you're projecting this out, feeling pretty comfortable about the idea of finally finding that young pass rusher. The guys that Brugler profiled: number 1, Eldrick Falk from Auburn. Number 2, TJ Parker from Clemson. Number 3, LT Overton from Alabama. Number 4, Mateo Uiagalelei. Did I say that right? Uiagalelei? Uiagalelei? You know what I'm trying to say. From Oregon. David Bailey from Texas Tech. Zion Young from Missouri. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. And those are just 7 names. You could include Bain Jr. and Jackson Jr., as Brugler wrote. It is a high-end, very deep class. So if we've got to go through another season without that young stud pass rusher, there is hope. There is hope to continue to build this the right way, get into next offseason, and find that diamond you've been looking for. There's hope. The depth of the expected class means if you go into next year's draft having to find that pass rusher, you don't have to reach. If there's 7, 8, 10 guys who can make a difference in their rookie seasons at the NFL level, you don't have to reach in the first round to get that guy. It doesn't make any sense. How many quarterbacks are going to go in the top 10? That will also play a huge role. And with more of these high-end defensive end prospects in next year's draft, that means more options for you, more options for Vrabel, more options for Elliott Wolf, because you could end up grabbing great value at a premium position in round 1. You might be able to grab a starter in round 2 because there's so many good defensive ends. If you want to go wide receiver in round 1 next year because you think that's more important, then you don't have to feel like, man, if we don't get the edge in round 1 and we go wide receiver, we got to wait another year to get that young edge. Not necessarily. You could end up drafting a wide receiver in round 1, and because of the depth of this class next year, you could still find that starting young pass rusher in round 2. You don't want to bank on free agency with wide receivers because, Mike Evans might re-sign, Terry McLaurin might re-sign, Deebo Samuel ages out, George Pickens doesn't do enough in Dallas, maybe Cortland Sutton re-signs in Denver, Jacoby Myers is getting older. That's your free agency class, folks. So maybe you do have to draft a wide receiver in the 26th draft in the first round. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're giving up on edge. So reading that from Dane Brugler made me practically stand up and do cartwheels in my living room. Now, I also think 2025, this season, is going to have a big impact on how you feel about this moving forward. If Stephon Diggs revives his career after ACL surgery and you feel like he could be a number 1 receiver for you in 2026, then maybe you feel better about drafting an edge there. Does another wide receiver step up? Are you set at left tackle? Does Will Campbell prove himself to be a starting left tackle, a bona fide starting left tackle in the NFL? Because if he struggles, then I hate to say it, you might be reliving the left tackle conversation in next year's draft. But if Campbell shows us he's ready, he's set, he's good to go, you don't have to worry about that. Maybe Drake May will need more help. And you'll say, we got to spend our top pick on more help for May. But it just gives you options. So if it doesn't work this year, if White doesn't end up being the guy, Chason Swinson, maybe a little bit more patience will pay off and we'll finally see that blue chip pass rushing prospect in New England. That wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Reach out to me on Twitter at NickC Radio. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. Also, hit that like button and subscribe. And by the way, the Locked On NFL Top 100 is being released this morning, Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern on Locked On Sports Today. The NFL Top 100 voted on by the NFL hosts, including yours truly here of Locked On. Some stunners. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Have an awesome day, and we'll see you tomorrow.